Welcome to Inside Late Night with Mark Malkoff. I am Mark Malkoff. Today, Barry Katz, legendary manager of some of the biggest comedians, Dave Chappelle, Saturday Night Live, Darrell Hammond, Jim Breuer, Tracy Morgan, Dane Cook. We talk about all of them and more. Now it's time to go Inside Late Night. Barry Katz, good to see you.
All right. I can't believe I made the cut.
You did. You were definitely here. I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time. The summer of 1995, Saturday Night Live auditions, they had a really tough 2 years. You had a client, Jay Mohr. To get anybody on that show, it was winning the lottery. And you get 23-year-old, 22-year-old Jay Mohr on the show. They are going to be doing heavy, heavy cleaning to this cast. I mean, they're calling it the new cast, and it really wasn't an entirely new cast. It was 6 people that they hired, and you have some of the best comedy roster in terms of stand-ups in the country. So this summer, you were taking your talent, and you have this relationship with Saturday Night Live, and you have people that have skill sets that are perfect for the show. Take me through your mindset. Take me through who your clients are and what your expectations are for these auditions.
Well, first of all, if I'm not mistaken, Jay Mohr was before 1995.
He was there from 93 to 95, and he was still under contract. They would not give him that summer. They would not give an answer if they were going to keep him or they weren't going to keep him. Were they still compensating him for that to keep him in the running? I know that they wouldn't give an answer for the longest time.
Well, I'll answer all of it for you. First of all, it's an honor being on the show. I really appreciate it. Some things are very humbling, and people always think to themselves, when they're doing their own podcast, I'm just a podcast host. I can't believe this person, came on my podcast. But it's the opposite. Whenever somebody invites you onto something and invites you to share their platform, it's an honor, and I just want to let you know that, and I appreciate it. And getting back to the Saturday Night Live thing, I love talking about Saturday Night Live because as much as I know, and I think I know about it, I realize that I know nothing, and very few people know anything about it except the man behind the curtain. And he's the one who knows the most about it, and that's Lorne. And to me, I always felt like he was. I don't think it's a stretch to say the guy's a genius, but it's his party. It's the parties in his home, and he invites the guests to his party. And as with any party, including yours, Mark, when you have a party, there's people at your party and where people are walking around, and in their minds, they're saying, why the fuck is that guy at this party? And then other people are like, oh, look at that guy in the corner with Mark. Yeah, he's pretty tight with Mark. I can understand why he's at the party. And that's the way it is. So when somebody says to me, who's perfect for Saturday Night Live, I would bet that out of the 175 to 200 cast members that there's been, I would be shocked if Lorne, could count on half a hand the cast members that were perfect. It's very, very challenging, the show, because you're dealing with, like I said, the man, the myth, the legend, doing things the way he's comfortable doing them. And he doesn't have to do anything any other way. And if you don't want to do things the way he wants to do them, there's always somebody else, because it's all about the systems. And I think that's one of the things that's missing with people that they don't understand is that, and I think one of my boys, really drilled it home to me is that every successful business there is, they have systems. And so you wonder to yourself, like if you go to a Starbucks and somebody writes your name wrong on the cup and they are rude to you or whatever, you wonder to yourself, oh my God, this is like, and then they're gone the next day and there's somebody in their place following the systems. And so that's all it's about. And SNL had its systems, and you've been through this a million times, and so have your viewers. So I don't think there's any reason to go through the Monday through Saturday system because you've been through it a million times. But so I had a lot of people that I thought were right for the show. What I thought were right for the show. That's just me. And I was very confident and I was very persistent. But I had no relationships really with anybody at Saturday Night Live. But I was the kind of guy who would just keep calling, faxing, just FedExing. I would always do everything in my power to figure out a way to reach them. And then, so they would come to my club and do showcases, and they did. And they saw everybody from, Chappelle to Jay Moore to Daryl Hammond, Jim Brewer, Tracy Morgan, you name it. And some people who I thought killed, and they would be on the show, they weren't on the show.
Elon Gold would be the person I would think that you managed. His reel is unbelievable. If people saw his reel on YouTube of his characters, it was one of those things where you would say to yourself, I cannot believe this guy did not get hired. He was unbelievable. Robert Smigel had him on Carvey, but he was one of your clients, and he auditioned for SNL in the New York Post.
I was there when he auditioned. He auditioned with, I believe, Laura Keitlinger at Stand Up New York, and had a wonderful audition. Farley was in the crowd that night, I believe, and but again, it's not up to me. It's not up to Elon. It's not our party. So when you're putting your party together, you're putting people together. I look at SNL in this way, and please excuse me for saying this for the people who are watching that are not sports fans, but so what's happening is Lorne is every year is trying to put together his dream team. So he takes, it's like the NBA or whatever. You have the best available people that he believes fit into certain slots, just like the Olympic team for basketball. So Jason Tatum, first team All-Star last 3 years or whatever, barely played. And Derek White, who is not as esteemed a basketball player as Jason Tatum, played more. Why? Because Steve Kerr was the Lorne Michaels of that team, and he saw certain matchups and certain things the way they were and how they were supposed to be. And so Lorne, in my mind, and again, I can't speak for him. This is what I perceive. My perception of what it was is that, so there's a group of young people who are his farm team, his kernels, popcorn that he has on the side that he wants to see if they can navigate through the political situations, through the office, through the back and forth, through the people who try to be negative, try to be positive, and the pressure. And he has those people, those kernels of popcorn, those young artists. And that doesn't affect his show. It's like that's not a career-threatening group of people. So when Jay Moore started on the show with Laura Keitlinger or people like that, or let's just take Sarah Silverman or Dave Attell, that's your farm team. That's your farm team for the Boston Red Sox, who is now coming up to the big leagues now or whatever. Sorry to mention so many sports things. And so he has that. That doesn't affect his show. It doesn't hurt his show. It doesn't help his show. It's just a situation where it's like, these are my people, and let me see who grows, and let me see who doesn't grow. And then we'll just take those people out and put new people into the system. And the people who grow through the system move up. But then he also hires people like Will Ferrell, who, I'm telling you, I was on the set at SNL. I can't even count the number of times. I swear to you, like, I never saw the guy up. I never saw the guy up, and I never saw the guy show any emotion. I never saw the guy. I'm not saying he showed tremendous emotion behind the scenes and on the set. I meant like emotion, like, oh, I blew that. Oh, what? Oh my God, what's Lauren gonna think about me? Oh my God, I could get fired. Nothing. It's just no care in the world about anything. Just like paneling. I felt the same way about Sherry O'Terry, except Sherry O'Terry behind the scenes was more like just alive nerve endings of like, oh my God, like, why aren't the writers doing this? Why aren't they doing that? And, you know, but when the red light went on, there's certain people that just crazy, like Sherry O'Terry. That red light goes on, it's over. You know,
Yes.
Will Ferrell, the red light goes on, it's over. Whereas somebody like Tracy Morgan, and I could say this if you were sitting next to me because he would agree with me. When the red light went on, it wasn't always happening. And as a matter of fact, one of his first pieces I remember, because I represented him, is he had this great piece on Weekend Update where he did a montage of his biggest moments on the show, and they were all waving goodnight at the goodnights. And so I thought that Tracy was able to stay and navigate through humility. He didn't, even though he was from the streets, he did not, he had an amazing street smarts and how to, Dr. Phil once told me this. The greatest advice he ever received was from his father. Never miss an important opportunity to shut up. And Tracy was that guy who just that wonderful street smarts combined with naivete and made him somebody who you didn't pick on. So even though he wasn't really doing great, he was just a sweet, lovable, huggable guy who...
Yeah, it took him a couple seasons, I'd say at least 2 seasons, to really get over with the audience. The timing was right. He was beloved. That summer of '95, they need somebody to do Bill Clinton, and Daryl Hammond, if you shut your eyes, he is Clinton, he's Donahue. You shut your eye, you just shut your eyes.
I'll never forget my, I could tell you so many crazy stories, and I think you've heard some through third hand or whatever, but let's just take the Jay Moore thing first, and then I'll go to the Daryl Hammond thing, because both are, even the Jim Brewer thing, and Tracy Morgan, those 4 stories are if somebody were to ask me the 4 greatest stories of my career, I think those would be 4, at least out of the top 7 or 8. And so,
start with Jay. Let's start with Jay. He did a show called Lip Service on MTV. You edit together a reel of that, his stand-up, and it's sent into the show, and then he does stand-up at Stand Up New York. You were there. Lorne Michaels is there. Marcy Klein. I'm guessing maybe Mike Shoemaker. I'm not sure who else. Take me through what happened.
Well, from my perspective, what happened was I'm there, and Jay comes in, and I don't know, he's like sweaty. He's like I can't figure out what's happening. I think he's either wearing sweatpants or shorts or something. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what's going on? He's like, hey, I jogged here from home. I'm like, you live on St. Mark's Place. We're at 78th Street. He's like, yeah, I wanted to just jog up here. And so, and he's dressed like, you think for an SNL audition, you're going to dress, you're going to be, you're going to look a certain way. He went in there looking like he didn't give a shit. And then he did his set. And I've always told him, I've always told everybody, let your act speak for itself, go on stage, get out of there. So he gets off stage and he starts to jog home, and Marcy runs out and says, you can't leave. You gotta wait for Lorne. Marcy Klein, by the way, who, my favorite thing about Marcy, and there's so many things I could mention. One of my other stories is Dane Cook, and getting him to host the show and how she reacted towards me. But she was always had the mouth of a sailor. And she was just always swearing one way or the other. And one of the things I remember of Marcy, to put a pin in the story for just 30 seconds, I'll never forget. She said this to me. She said, I said, Marcy, it must be so exciting being Calvin Klein's daughter. It's just, it's like I was kidnapped, Barry. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. It's like, but it must be really nice being, it's so exciting. She's like, Barry, let me tell you something. It's horrible. You know why it's horrible? Every time I go on a date and I bring a guy home and he takes off his pants, I have to look at my father's name. Do you know what a buzzkill that is, Barry?
Oh man, never thought of that.
So let me keep going for Jay. So Jay meets Lorne, whatever. They offer him the show, and I'm not going to talk about his time on the show right now because this is the most important part of your story. So what Lorne often does, and I've experienced it many times, and he doesn't just do it with Jay, he's done it with a number of people, is that, Business Affairs sends a letter, says, hey, we'd like to extend you a free extension for 30 days while we decide what we're doing with our cast. So they sent the first letter. Jay was disappointed. He says, okay, Barry, no problem. Then July 1st comes around, we get another letter. Jay was kind of like a little more irritated, like, God, I'd like to know, I want this so bad. Anything we can do, Barry. I called Lorne. I said, listen, he really wants to do this. He's going to be great for you. Lorne was like, I understand, Barry, but I have to decide what I'm doing. Another 30-day extension. And then on August 1st, if I'm not mistaken, we get another one. And that's when Jay got, upset and said, listen, Barry, I can't do this anymore. You got to tell Lorne that I can't extend anymore. I said, I don't want to tell Lorne that. I want him to know that he can have you. He said, Barry, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. If he wants me, I'm here. He can come and ask me, but I'm not going to sign this for another month. I'm just not going to do it up until the date when they start. I just don't want to do it. I believe in myself. I'm going to bet on myself, and I want you to bet on me too. And I said, no problem. I'm with you 100%. Figure it out. He doesn't sign the extension. I tell Lorne, and this is how fate and tragedy are like your greatest friends, who's ever listening. It's like, so no sooner than the notice, I tell Lorne he's not signing the notice. I get an audition for Jerry Maguire. The first one was for The Babysitter. Now, I don't know how much you remember this movie, how much your audience remembers it, but The Babysitter ended up being Donald Logue cast, and he was the guy with the jazz cassettes. You got to listen to these jazz tapes. This is the greatest thing, whatever. Jay didn't get that one. Then the next audition comes in for it. They say, will he come back for the football player, the quarterback? So he auditions for the quarterback for Cameron Crowe. He doesn't get it. Jerry O'Connell gets it. So then get another call. Will he come back and audition for the Bob Sugar role? we want to do a screen test with him and Tom Cruise. And so they reenact the screen test at the table, the firing scene in the restaurant, where, if you remember, they focus in on the glass of ice water and whatever. And he does it, and he gets the movie. So now he passed on SNL signing the thing. He gets this movie with Tom Cruise. And then when he's on the set with Tom Cruise, it just snowballs because he's so hot. And then he gets the call. They want him to do Jennifer Aniston's first movie, Picture Perfect. And the funny part is he had to fly at the end of Jerry Maguire right to New York. And his first scene up was his first makeout scene with Jennifer Aniston. And so right before he got on the plane, he went to Tom Cruise's trailer and he knocked on the trailer and he said, Tom, I got to go right from here to this thing. And I don't even really meet her. I go right in and I have to do the makeout scene. And I got information from Barry that her boyfriend, Tate Donovan, didn't get it. And she's pissed off and she wanted him, not me. And what do I do? How do I kiss her? Do I kiss her? Do I do the soap opera kiss? Do I do the open mouth kiss? Do I do the tongue kiss? Like, what do I do, Tom? And I'll give your audience a moment to guess which thing he said to Jay to do. But what he did say to Jay did, which he said, listen, Jay, whenever you're doing a scene with a woman like that, you do one thing and one thing only. You follow her lead. Whatever she does, you do. And then his career just took off. So it was like a situation where for Jay, that was an incredible moment for me that I remember because, you have the high of going to SNL and seeing a guy with such great potential. You have the low of like a situation where he may not get back. You have the artist taking control over their career with the power of no, and then manifesting working with the biggest movie star in the world. And
yeah, he had 2 seasons on Saturday Night Live as a featured player. Probably, I would say Christopher Walken, Andrew McCarthy. Chris Walken for sure was his biggest standout. So he would have come back. That would have been Will Ferrell's first season. That's when he said, I'm not going to do this. And that's when Jerry Maguire and Bob Sugar, and he changed his life. And you were an EP on Action on Fox, which was way ahead of its time, especially for network television. And his career exploded. It's an unbelievable thing. And the fact that you supported him through it.
Yeah, it was an amazing time. And I've worked with Jay for probably 30 years. I worked with him for 25 years, and I worked with him again through this extraordinary journey of sobriety and his new relationship and marriage. And it's like, it's amazing. It's truly amazing to see the transformation that he's made as a person and as an artist. And I will say this, it's like, that's one of the greatest things about being a manager as well, because I used to represent these people when they were teenagers. And like, I just had gotten a text from Louis C.K. about a month ago to inviting me to the Improv to come talk with him and see him. And I hadn't seen him in 20 years. He was my first client ever. And, you're standing across from, I mean, I know it sounds silly, but you're standing across from a man, and you have the memories of when you represented people as boys. And so, but I'll transition again to tragedy and comedy, because everything having to do with SNL has to do with these moments that are the highest highs and the lowest lows. So let's just go next with Darrell Hammond.
They need somebody to do Clinton. And he was an absolute master. That Phil Donahue was still on the air at the time. And in terms of somebody's skill set as an impressionist, I'd say Darrell and Elon Gold maybe were the 2 best. I mean, I can't think of many other people that auditioned that season, especially that had their skill set.
Yeah, so Darrell, he came into my office to meet me about management. And I sat down with him and I said, what do you want, Daryl? He said, I came from Florida to New York to be on Saturday Night Live. I said, okay, well, then we're going to get you on Saturday Night Live. And he looked at me like the dog looks at the answering machine, because, you know, who has that kind of confidence? But the one thing about me that I don't understand, and I never have understood, is that I've always been able to meet artists and see something, you know, that's going to happen in the future. And it's happened like over 25 times where I met somebody who was like living in a studio apartment and they became like a multimillionaire and a household name. And it's like this weird thing. And I don't, you know, I know this sounds like cocky. It's not meant to be, but
It's not. No, if you look at your roster and the people that you started with, it's unbelievable. I mean, we could do a whole hour or two on Chappelle when he was a teenager, showing up from DC to the Boston Comedy Club, and he has no friends to bring to do the Bringer show, and he's on stage, and Jason Steinberg jaw drops and calls you, and you get on a subway downtown to the club, and it's this. What was he? 16, 15, something like that.
he was 17. I remember I met him before the show started, and I shake his hand in the middle of the showroom when the lights were on and people were walking in. And I said, how you doing, man? Great to meet you. I just want to let you know I would like to represent you. He said, what are you talking about? You don't even know me. You never seen me perform. I don't understand. I said, you know, I just know. And shaking your hand, it's like the dead zone. I can see the future, and you're going to be one of the biggest stars in the world in comedy. You're going to change the face of what comedy is, and and you're going to inspire millions of people along the way, and you're going to have more money than you can ever imagine, and create shows and do specials. And he was he was looking at me like I was crazy. But yeah, so it just happened over and over again. And you know, like I always say, like, you know, maybe once you're lucky, twice is a coincidence, three times is a fluke. But when it happens that many times, there's something happening. Again, I say this to your audience, and I say this to you. We all don't understand everything that happens or why it happens, or and I still don't understand it. I look, you know, I mean, when I met Brad Williams, you know, it was one of the most exciting things for me, because I had worked with disabled kids and adults, and here this guy who's 4'4" comes in my office. Now I'm sure a lot of people were like, disabled comics, not a big market out there for them. But there was something, I met him and I was like, man, you are gonna kill it. And now, you know, when I go to his house that like is like a palatial mansion, and I go to these theaters where thousands of people are waiting to meet him, and it's just so I love that part of it. So going back to Daryl, so when I met Daryl, he was a little bit different than the kind of artist that I would normally work with, because he was probably closer to, you know, 40. And I was mainly specializing in working with younger kids, teenagers, or in their early 20s. But there was something about him. And I said, let me have you go on at Caroline's and let me film you doing your impressions, and I'll edit it together and I'll send it to SNL. And back then, there were only certain ways you could get them your submission. This is before the internet, so this is before you. So they would only take things by FedEx or certain registered mail. You couldn't just drop things off or do whatever. And and I remember this vividly. I was an editor myself, but I would like to sit with this editor I knew named Pete Klusman. He was like a war veteran, and he had this crazy office. And it was one of those 3/4 inch tape editing machines that you'd edit with, and then you transfer it to a VHS tape. And I have to get it to SNL by the next day, so I have to get it to FedEx by 9 p.m. is the deadline. And I remember I'm editing all, from like 5 o'clock after work or 6 o'clock, and I'm thinking this is no problem. And the electricity goes out in this building, and I'm running all over the place to try to find the superintendent because it's not my building to get the turn back on. I finally get it turned back on. I finish the edit of the tape, and I sprint down to FedEx. I call my assistant, Lynn Getz, who is no longer with us, who I love dearly. She held the door open for me, even though they were trying to close it on her. And I ran there, and I got the package and it got there overnight. And we worked on his audition. And I remember sitting down with Daryl because I was really great at putting together auditions and writing them, even though I've never been credited for writing a script or a book or anything. But I loved helping people write their stuff. And I asked him, is there any character that you have that you haven't done on stage, because you just don't have the material for it, but it's great? And he thought to himself, and you know how Daryl is, he has that serious look, and he said, Ted Koppel. I said, okay, well, we're going to do a Nightline with Ted Koppel, and all your characters are going to come in through Nightline. We're going to write that. We're going to put it together. You're going to audition. So then he auditioned, killed, and they wanted him to go to 30 Rock at a certain time, and he was getting dental work done. And back then you couldn't communicate to people as well. There weren't like these ways to communicate like there are now. So it's like, I remember he got to SNL late, and Marcy tore me a new colon. She was so angry at me. We're walking in, she's yelling at him. And I said, please don't yell at him. He's got to audition. Yell at me. It's my fault. I'll take the hit. And he went in and he got the show, and the first cold open on the first episode of that season was Ted Koppel. And so I'll never forget the adversity with Daryl and the things he went through, which I'm not going to go through because we don't have time. And now he's probably one of the longest running people there. He still does the opening that the legendary Don Pardo used to do. So that's Daryl. And then there's three more extraordinary stories that I'll tell you. One is with Jim Breuer.
Yeah, let's get to Breuer. This was a very unique time because, to my knowledge, this was the only cast member in the history of the show where Lorne Michaels did not want Jim Breuer as a cast member, but he didn't have as much leverage as he always did before because they had 2 rough seasons. And NBC was insistent on Breuer, and Jim got the show. Now, at what point in the process did you realize that Lorne did not want Jim, but had to take him?
Well, again, those are stories and conversations that I presumed were the case, but
Jim said that they were, and I've heard from internally. I've talked to people, and it's been confirmed. If you don't want to talk about it, we don't have to.
No, I love talking about everything. It's just like I love when people talk about things and they weren't in the room when the conversations happened. So, Joe told me that this is what happened. Well, were you in the room when that happened? Were you Jay Leno in the audio-visual room listening to the boardroom conversation?
I hear you.
But I'm not disagreeing with you. But I have to tell you this story, and I hope that I have enormous respect for Jim. Jim, one of the absolute funniest human beings in person or on stage that I ever was around. And there's certain people throughout my life that I have great relationships with, even after I've represented them or not. And Jim's one of those guys that I have not really had any real dialogue with that much. And I have, so much love and respect for him. But I just, there's some people you just, but this story that I'm going to tell your audience, I just can't even believe it myself. But anyway, so the Montreal Just for Laughs Festival is 1 year. I didn't get anybody in.
This is a legendary story, and this is so gutsy, daredevil of you, a complete anarchist, as somebody that does not have the power, and you got the power. You tell everybody what happened. This is legendary.
And this is, it's coming from me, so this is.
It's the truth, though, and it's what it 100% happened. So
I was kind of disappointed because I felt like I had great people, and I was like, oh my God, I didn't get anybody in. Are you kidding me? So then I started calling the comedy clubs that they would feature comedians in at that time, like the Comedy Nest, the Comedy Works, whatever. And a bunch of them said no to me. But this guy, Ernie Butler, who's no longer with us, said, sounds like a great idea. Let's do it. He said, what do you want to do? He doesn't even know me. I'm on the phone convincing. There's no FaceTime. There's no Zoom. I'm on a phone call, an audio phone call, and I'm convincing this guy to give me 3 nights during the festival, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for my showcases for 18 comedians that he does not know.
That are not part of the festival at all. These people travel. They get on airplanes. They spend so much money to be put up, and they're given a schedule. So you are.
I convinced these 18 people to pay for their own way in their own hotels to Montreal, and I was going to pack these rooms with industry. Now, again, there's no way to reach people like there is now. So I took out a full-page ad in the Hollywood Reporter and Variety, which at the time were hot, but it was like $3,000 an ad, and then from those ads, I got the fax numbers of every executive in town, every agent, every television studio, every network, every producer, every single person that you can imagine. And I stayed up all night long, many nights, pulled all-nighters, and faxed these invitations to people. That's the only way I could reach them. And I started putting these lists together, and it was incomprehensible to me. Like hundreds of people were RSVPing for these shows, and it was crazy. It was just so crazy, and to orchestrate these 18 people going on. And after it was all said and done, I got 7 development deals for my clients, and no one at the festival got any development deals.
Brewer, Chappelle, it's unbelievable. And the festival was not happy.
No, they weren't. I'll tell you about that too. But so I would have to take these meetings at places just because there's, they don't have a car. I've got a car. I've got to take. So we'd have to take these meetings where there were like 5 people in a row taking meetings in a conference room, trying to, sell their wares or whatever to the people. And Jim was, just getting back to Jim was so funny. Like after, he'd have this thing where the person would walk out to get him and he would be lying on the floor, sleeping on the floor, snoring. And it was like, there's so many things that he did that were so incredible. And so So he was offered a deal from NBC, and the driving point person was this woman, this wonderful woman named Amy Walpert at the time, who was working with Warren Littlefield. And there were several other people, but she loved Jim. And so that was one of the development deals that was offered by NBC. And I'll never forget the situation that happened where Chris Albrecht at HBO, I had a bad situation with him because and I'd overcome it, and I offered him for Chappelle to meet with him and for specials, a series, a show, because Dave had like 7 or 6 development deals with Disney with pilots that had failed in a row. That's why Dave's company is called Pilot Boy, because he did so many pilots. Long story longer, meet with HBO and Chris Albrecht, who was there at the time. Chris, for your history lessons, used to be the doorman at the Improv long ago and became the most powerful guy, network president there was at HBO. This is before Netflix. And so we get offered a deal, all-encompassing deal for Chappelle at HBO, all-encompassing deal for Brewer at NBC. Things are coming together. It's like the most amazing thing. And then I get a call from Gene Blythe at Disney and Dean Valentine's Day. Hey, listen, I hear rumors you guys are looking at these other deals. Listen, do me a favor. Don't sign anything. I'm going to send you some first-class tickets. We're going to fly you out here. I said, I just got back from there. Whatever, you want to go back out there? Come on, Barry. Let's come on back out. Just don't do anything. We've had all these deals. We sit down with them. They offer a spin-off to Home Improvement. Home Improvement was the #1 show on thing, and they offered the show, which eventually became buddies with Matt Williams, who'd created Cosby, Roseanne, Home Improvement, and he was like Chuck Lorre back then. And the guys decided that they wanted to work together and not work with NBC or HBO. Chris Albrecht, I think he probably had a hit out for me. I mean, I don't think it took me 10 years before I could do something else with him with Dane Cook, and he believed that I was going to do something. And so this is what's crazy. So we do the spinoff with Home Improvement. We get our protected time slot. Back then, there's the TV guide. For those old enough to know, there was no TV guide on the TV. It was like a paper TV guide, and you'd open it up, full page ad, buddies, and we're shooting our pilot episode. It's killing. People are loving it. It's unbelievable. Like, Jim brought his whole family in. Dave's got family. It's the greatest. It's one of the greatest moments of my life. You know, who could not be happy with this moment? And I remember sitting back in the dressing room with the door open, watching them celebrate. You know, how you see people laughing with their family and, drinking and whatever. And the phone rings in the dressing room. And I pick up the phone. I'm like, hey, how you doing? It's Barry. What, Debbie? And it was Debbie Klein, who was the lawyer to Jim Brewer. And she said, Barry, how are you doing? I said, oh, I'm great, man. I wish you could have been here. It's fantastic. I'm so excited, Debbie. This is incredible. Yeah, I wish you were here. It's unbelievable. What? Come on, Debbie. Stop around. We're having a great. And she proceeds to tell me that Jim has been fired from the show. They made the decision after the show ended. They met, and while they're partying on the stage there, they made the decision that they were going to take Jim out because they didn't think that he was a strong enough actor to be able to make it work. And I said, Debbie, what do you want me? You want me to get him in here to tell him? She's like, No, Barry, I think it's better if you tell them. And I'm like, oh my God. So I thought to myself, how do I do this? Like, what do I, because life has this way of just teaching you how to be through trial and error. And I looked out and I saw him with his family and having the greatest time. And I just said to myself, good. And I went out there and I had the greatest time with him as well. And I hang and partied with them and until the end, until he went back to his hotel room. And then before he went back to his hotel room, because Dave was staying in the hotel, I stopped by Dave first and I told him what happened and what I had to do and that I was going to fight it as best I could, but I have to tell Jim. But I wanted to tell him first because I thought that, Dave was the original person at Disney and he's the one who supported Jim. And I wanted to let him know right before I walked into Jim's place because I thought maybe Dave might, also have some words of thoughts or wisdom or something that because he was a young kid but an old soul and he was devastated and there was no other thing to do but for me to tell him and I did and I told Jim and it was the most difficult thing I think I've ever done in my life and it was horrible and I'm going to just tell you this. So I'm just going to put that right here for a second. Matt Williams keeps trying to meet with Dave. I'm trying. I barely can get them together. Matt sits down with him and says, Dave, I know you don't understand it, but if I recast this, we're going to have a show that's going to go 7 years. And if it doesn't, I'll write you a check for $10,000. And Dave was still pissed off, but he kept going with the show. They cast a guy named Christopher Garton, and the show got canceled. And I got a check in the mail for $10,000 from Matt Williams for Dave Chappelle, Pilot Boy Productions. But let's keep going here. So imagine this. Imagine being with a girlfriend, okay? She's courting you for months, years. She gives everything, all her love to you. And you walk away from her, NBC, and then you go to ABC, the other girl in town that's a little, maybe a tiny bit sexier, a tiny bit prettier, and a tiny bit more influential or whatever you moves your world. And then you get fired, and that old girlfriend says, you know what? I'm going to put all that behind and I'm going to fight for you to get Saturday Night Live. And that was what was amazing about Amy Walpert, an incredible person. I'll never forget her. She was just so good. And Warren Littlefield. So I got everything together. Jim auditioned, and I don't think he heard that he got the show until October 1st or 2nd. I mean, it was like the latest I'd ever known anybody.
It was really late. He had a dinner with Lorne, and in dress rehearsal, the first show, they gave him his own sketch that got cut, and he had nothing to do the first episode, other than he had one line. I think he said hello, which was to Marielle Hemingway when she was walking around. And I mean, Jim had his dad there, his family. I mean, those first 10 shows, the half of the season with Daryl and Jim, and they're both your clients, and they're struggling to get on. I mean,
Daryl, again, Daryl's the cold open of the first season there he was on, he was the lead guy in that sketch. So to me, like if somebody told me, hey, Daryl, you can be in all 10 episodes and have inconsequential stuff, or you can have the cold open of the first show. I'll take the cold open of the first show.
Yeah, he was very good with the Nightline piece, and they did update together. They both did commentaries. But I remember when Phil Donahue was leaving, Daryl wanted to do a commentary as Donahue and couldn't even get that on. my point is it takes certain cast members. It took a while for them to get over, and Steve Corrin saved Jim Brewer with the Joe Pesci show. I mean, that Anthony Edwards episode, which was December of '95. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I was like, Jim figured this out. I mean, this is clearly going to take him to the next level at SNL, and it did. And Daryl, as well as it progressed, it just took a little bit of time. But then you have only 6 people were hired as new cast members and 2 stand-ups, and you got both of them. They were your clients. That's unbelievable. I mean, they took 2 Groundlings, 2 Second City people from Chicago, and all these people have clients from all over the place with their stand-ups, and you get both slots. It's unbelievable.
Well, I don't know. It's just the way it worked out. Somebody has to be that guy. So at that time, I guess I was. But so Jim was there, and then I always felt like they needed something to let him go or to do something. And I remember he did this sketch show for MTV, or these characters for MTV, that really pissed Lorne off. And then he did an article in a New Jersey newspaper where he, I think there was quotations around the thought process that the writers don't necessarily write for him the way he thinks they could possibly write for him. And so once they got word of that, it was very hard. And I'll never forget, they were deciding on whether Jim to get the show or not. And you just reminded me of this. God, it's unbelievable. I was always great at writing letters. I loved writing letters, passionate letters. And I sat down at my typewriter. That's right, folks, a typewriter with my whiteout when I made a mistake, and I typed a full 2-page letter to Lorne Michaels, passionately lobbying for him to keep Jim Brewer for a third show. And Lorne called me and he said, "I want you to call me at this number at midnight." I'll never forget this. I'm calling, and it was a hotel, and it connected me to his room. And I always had this habit of saying, "What's up, young man?" And I never really had I don't think I ever had the kind of relationship with Lorne that maybe other people had or whatever. I mean, he always said hello. We always talked at the parties, we'd show. He's amazing to me. He was extraordinary to me. He believed in me and my eye and the artist. He changed my life forever, even though he probably doesn't even think of it in those terms, or maybe he does. So he said something to me, and it was one of those moments in my life where it was a wonderful moment and a sad moment. And he said, "Barry, I just want to say something. That was one of the most amazing letters I've ever received in my life. I mean, it's the art of letter writing is dead. It's like a dying breed. And the fact that you wrote that letter and it was so passionate, I just want you to know I so appreciate it, and it meant the world to me." So I'm thinking, okay, we're in, I'm like, whatever. And then he just says, "But Barry, I just have to tell you, it's like, I know I'm the main guy. I know I'm the head guy. I know I have veto power over a lot of things. But sometimes when you lose the people in the room, it's hard to unring the bell, and it's like, I feel like a lot of the people in the trenches felt betrayed by the fact of not just the show on that he was doing the characters on, but the article. And and I tried to turn them around, but I don't think I was able to do that. And again, all you have is what people tell you. That's all you have in your life. And I tell this to your audience as well. A great example that we all have, you know when somebody feels something for you, or you know when somebody wants to talk to you. There's one time where you always know. When you're walking through an area that's busy, it doesn't matter where it is in the world. It could be an airport, a bus station, a street, a Starbucks, a mall, and you hear, I'll give you an example, Mark. You're walking and you hear, Mark, and you're like, and you're looking around and you're like, who's calling you? Mark! And then you realize it's somebody you haven't seen in a long time, and they called your name because they wanted to talk to you. They enjoy talking to you. They feel safe talking to you. And that's how you know, because let's face it, how many times, Mark, have you been walking through an airport or a station or a Starbucks and you saw somebody and you knew and you're like, oh, let's get out of here. I don't
Did
want
you
to
see
talk.
me today? Was that you?
Not to see this. So the fact, when Lorne calls back,
It means a lot. He doesn't do that with a lot of people. I mean, the fact that he called you up and he basically said, "I could not get the support of the writers." I mean, Adam McKay has talked about this. Jim Brewer's talked about it. It's been talked about in public that Lorne went around the room and asked the head writers, certain key people, what they thought about certain cast members coming back. And McKay admits he said Jim had a great couple seasons, but he thought it was, he basically did what he did and it was time to move on. And traditionally, what would happen is that a performer, a cast member, if they were going to do an outside project, would go to Lorne first and ask him to produce their whatever the project is, and that was not done for whatever reason. Am I right or wrong with that MTV summer show?
No, it was not. And we also had a movie we were trying to get going with Tracy Morgan as well that was challenging as well. This is before the contracts. They changed the contracts to have 3 films in each contract. But the bottom line is, and before we get to Tracy and maybe Dane Cook if we have time, is the thing with every artist out there that's listening to this, and you don't even have to be an artist. You could be a landscaper, you could make cupcakes, you could have your own hat business. Whatever it is, you have to understand what your part is in everything and what the other people's part is. And then what's the truth and what really happened and how did it happen? And the bottom line is that you have to always follow the money. And the money is where the power is. And whoever's paying for something, whoever makes the most money in the situation, whoever is the one who has the most, they're the ones that everything flows from. So whether it was all the writers, whether he went around the room and asked everybody what they thought or what they didn't think, the bottom line is that when it comes to a person who's in charge, the show is a reflection of that person, and you have to figure out how to navigate and know how to make things work. And whether it worked for you or not, you have to look at what it is. Will Ferrell has to look at why things went so well for him. He doesn't have to look at it, but if he wants to analyze it, he could sit down and say, look, these are all the things that I did right. These are all the things that, and I hate to use the word right or wrong, but these are all the things that I did that reflected favorably on me and gave me an advantage on the show. And these are the things that I did that weren't as favorable, but they were little things down here. They didn't affect anything. And so every cast member has to look in the mirror and understand how they assessed the situation and how they figured out how to navigate to survive.
A lot of those cast members, though, almost all of them, if they wanted to, could feel slighted and at any point and be demonstrative with being confrontational, where the smart ones keep their mouths shut. I mean, Seth Meyers said the best advice he got from Mike Shoemaker was, whenever you're upset at SNL at another person and there's this happens, just don't say anything. And in 10 years, you'll probably be at this person's wedding. And he said it was the best advice. And there are certain cast members, like Brewer has said publicly, that with Chris Kattan, he believed Kattan took an idea of his and he was vocal about it and made a big deal about it. Whereas a lot of the other cast members, stuff like that can happen. And the ones that I feel like maybe have a little bit more self-control, perhaps have a better chance of staying and having longevity. Is that fair to say?
No, it's fair to say in life. It's fair to say in life. Nobody gives a what you think. Nobody cares about what you think, and what anybody else thinks is none of my business either. What all that matters is put my head down and do the best I can. And if a door closes here or somebody's not going to give me an opportunity here, figure out a solution. I always say to people, and they probably roll their eyes to me, whenever they want to do anything, like let's just say somebody, says, whatever, I can't get a job. I worked for you, Barry, and then I go out in the workplace and this past month, everybody says they all get jobs when they work with you, and I'm not getting a job, and it's just I can't do it. I'm writing, I'm emailing, I'm doing whatever, and then I just say to them, and this could go for anything. I say, if your family and friends were being held hostage, and the guy on the other line said, you will never see them again alive until you get a job and you send me a letter from the boss saying that you got the job, then you're never going to see them again. Are you going to get a job? Yes, you're going to get a job. So if you say to anybody who goes into SNL, hey, listen, if you can't figure out a way to navigate, your family's going to die. You'll figure out a way to navigate. You will figure out the lay of the land and figure it out. But a lot of people, they have a lot of confidence in their ability and their talent in many situations. And it doesn't just have to do with acting or a show like this. Anybody listening, you have a skill set. You think you're great at it, but there's more things to a skill set. Just like there's more things to American Idol than the singing. There's the interviews. You have to win over the world with your interviews and, cry and tell the people the adversity you've been through and how you're getting through and you're going to the top. And it's not just about the talent. It's another side.
There is a way to conduct yourself. There's a Saturday Night Live cast member. I'm not going to mention their name. I'll tell you afterwards. Their very first show, they got into lots of trouble because at Good Night, they elbowed their way to the very, very top, standing right next to whoever the host was or music, right in the front. And any other in entertainment, to have confidence like that is a good thing. But at a place like that, when you're a new cast member and you're a featured player and it's your first show, there is a hierarchy, and it just like a political move like that. It just did not go well for this person right away.
I found it funny for the 50th anniversary that a cast member who I represented, and I still represent it. It's like they weren't, I think they would come on here and they would say they weren't obviously one of the biggest cast members ever. I'm talking about Dean Edwards. And at the very end of the 50th, because it's a live show, so you don't know what's happening. So he just finds himself shaking people's hands, and then he's like up to the front somehow with Eddie Murphy, and then the last shot of the 50th anniversary is him hugging Lorne. It was the craziest thing. Like, it's like,
I love
and
that.
and nothing can happen to him.
I love
Nobody can do anything to you at that point. You're like,
Dean Edwards beat out Kevin Hart for SNL that season, and that is an unbelievable story in itself. And I want to get to Tracy Morgan. I do want to mention to people that are listening right now, if you want a master class in comedy, I heard Barry Diller talk about many times his education was the mailroom, and he was reading all the files, the history of show business, industry standard. If you want to work in entertainment or you are just interested in the history, oh my goodness! I mean, this it was a treasure. I really wish something like this existed. That there were podcasts back in the day that I could get a hold of information like this, especially for younger people. I mean, who gets to sit down with Norman Lear and then Ted Sarandos and just everybody, Apatow, and just pick their brains? I mean, it was the most. It's one of my favorite things to do is to go back to some of those episodes that I haven't listened to in a while. And you're such a good sport to have someone like Bill Burr roast you for 90 minutes. But it's unbelievable. But I want people to check that out. And we're going to get to barrykatz.com as well. And well, it's the truth, and you have this amazing treasure trove of showbiz stories with so many people that unfortunately aren't with us anymore. But it's an unbelievable resource. So check that out. But let's get to Tracy Morgan. So this is the deal. So Tracy Morgan, it was the year after Will Ferrell's first season. This would have been '96, and they're going to be doing auditions, and they do not want to see another person. You have all these people on a list to audition, and you basically tell Marcy Klein, you have to see this person. She's like, no, we don't have room. And you do not take no for an answer. This is very Barry Katz. Take us through it.
well, that was really an amazing time. Again, thanks for giving a shout out to Industry Standard. It was like something that surprisingly, that's Jay Moore who inspired me to do that, because I did his first episode of his podcast and there was like 500,000 people listened, and it was like a shot. And he said, listen, I want you to do my third, my 10th, my 20th. And before I knew it, there were millions of people. And he said, you got to do a podcast. And I asked everybody in the industry I knew if I should do it. And they said, no, don't do it. No, there's not any manager doing something like that. You can't. That even fueled me even more to do it. And I don't think there still is a manager doing it or whatever. But I just always wanted to help people. I always wanted to be of service and in some way. And I felt as a manager, you can only help one person. You can help the network, you can help millions of people laugh or do whatever, but so I wanted to figure out a way where I could be of service, and it's all worked out.
Even the FedEx envelopes, the people that alone, if they're not in the entertainment industry, if you want somebody to make sure it gets to a decision maker, mail it in a FedEx envelope. That was a thing that people would write you and email you. Thank you for the tip, Barry. It worked, and it was little these.
Who doesn't open a FedEx? I mean, there isn't anybody in the world that doesn't open a FedEx. You got to spend some money, but if you want to make sure your message gets read, it's going to go there. And so, but anyway, going on to Tracy. So, so Tracy came in my office. He was managed by these people at the Uptown Comedy Club in Harlem. And his contract ended, and he came to me, came in my office. I'll never forget, he was wearing, it looked like he just worked under his car. He was wearing one of those white T-shirts that's not white anymore, with like mold, with those holes in it from moss. He had like dirty sneakers, dirty shorts. He had this, I don't know what you call that thing on top of your head with the propeller that goes around. And he said, listen, I live in the projects and with my 4 kids and my girlfriend, and it's dangerous. And I want you to help me get out. And I said, no problem. I'll figure out something. And I edited together a video. I was a great editor, like I said, of these scenes he did on Martin as Hustle Man. And I sent them around, and I got him a $60,000 development deal at the WB network. And it helped him move out of his place in the projects into a high rise in Yonkers, I believe, on the water. And then I told him I thought he could do SNL when he was, didn't think that he had a chance. And I put another edited tape together, sent it to them. And it was a really great year. I had, they were auditioning 16 people at the comic strip, and I had 7 of them. I had 7 people auditioning out of the 16. And so I got a call from Marcy Klein with Lorne. Lorne didn't say much. He was listening on the phone. Didn't really say much. And Marcy said, listen, Lorne really appreciates everything that you've got. So many people auditioning, and we appreciate your eye, but Lorne wants to keep it to 15 comedians. And we assessed the situation, and we determined that there's one comedian who has the least chance of getting the show. And I said, you can't, I don't want to even hear it. You can't do that. I worked hard with these people. I've been preparing them. And she said, Barry, I'm sorry. It's Tracy Morgan. I said, you can't do that. I've been working with him. I've been preparing him, because one thing I didn't tell her right then is that he never worked a white audience in his lifetime. This would have been the first time he ever worked in front of a white audience. And I was preparing him in my office. There was an empty office next door to mine that they just moved out. And every day I'd have him come up for an hour, and we'd go through the audition process and how the bits and what to do. And she hung up on me and said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to take him off. And I didn't tell him. I kept calling SNL. I kept faxing them, FedExing them, doing whatever, messengering them. And they didn't take any of the calls. And it was like 4:00 the day of the showcase. And Marcy finally picked up the phone. And I'm like, oh, Marcy, oh, thank God. I'm so grateful. I appreciate. Shut the f- up, Barry. And I'm like, Marcy, come on. I was just, shut up. You calling here? This is Saturday Night Live. Okay. You don't call here 100 times, messenger stuff. You don't do that. I said, Marcy, but I Tracy Morgan, you got to put him on the show. You just have to put him on it. Barry, shut up. I'm like, no, I can't shut up, Marcy. I need this to happen. I'm telling you, he's going to get the show. It's going to make it happen. Please, Barry, shut up. And I shut up, and there was silence on the end of this line. And for it seemed like an eternity. And she said, he's on the show, Barry. I said, oh, Marcy. Oh, thank you so much. I'm so grateful. I so appreciate you. Oh, thank you so much. And there was a pause on the phone. And then she said, and this is how I remember it. She said, Barry, if he doesn't get the show, burn my phone number. And she hung up. And that's the way I remember it, because she always was so good to me and so lovable and huggable to me. But she also, with me, she had this thing where you just never knew where you. And I love that about her.
So that night when Tracy auditions with all those other people, does he do better than? It's hard to tell sometimes, because everybody says when Dana Gould auditioned with, I think it was with Sandler and Schneider, everyone thought Dana Gould was going to get it, and Spade, but Dana Gould did not get it. Did Tracy stand out that night compared to everybody else in your mind?
Yeah, because he was very physical, and he was very street, and it was so new to this white audience that they loved it, and he really killed. I mean, there were people who did really well, and they went, and they also got to test at 30 Rock. People like a guy named Maceo tested. Daryl tested that night. On that comic strip show. I don't know why they had him, but they did. There were a lot of people on that show that did well, but he did really, really well. And then he ended up getting the show. He was like, I think him and Daryl, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong. You would know more than I could.
It was him and Anna Gasteyer. Daryl was the season before, so it was
Thank
they
you so
brought
much.
Anna in from the Groundlings.
Thank you so much. So Tracy
Yeah,
was the
and
only
Tracy.
one. He was the only one on that. Thank you. That's what editing's for. He was the only one on that showcase that got the show, and they thought that he wasn't going to get it. So that's
It's
fascinating.
an unbelievable success story, and it was one of those things where it took him at least, I would say, his 3rd season before he really got over with the audience, and, once he did, I think it was a T-Sean Shannon piece when he would, interact with Lauren and say, "Go get me a Sprite," and play himself, and, it took him, and then the Brian Fellows sketches, which was Hugh Fink, and then it went from Hugh, and then it went to Tim Herlihy, and then T-Sean once Herlihy left, and, he really shined and found his voice. It's just it took him a while.
Yeah, yeah. And so I can't leave you without telling you the Dane Cook story.
I wanna know this. So Dane Cook, I do know that when he auditioned for SNL, he was a nervous wreck, correct? Didn't he leave during his audition?
I don't ever remember Dane Cook to be nervous. I remember him to be distraught about things in life and how the world was and his place in it, but I've never really felt that he was nervous about anything. I mean, he was, and when he finally auditioned for SNL, which he wasn't sure he wanted to do, it was at the comic strip, and he had a fan base then, and so there was like 500 or 1,000 people outside the comic strip. It was insanity. And Lauren came in with Steve Martin to watch the show. And Dane killed, had an amazing time. Did not get called to do the show, though. Wasn't asked to be a cast member, which was the best thing that ever happened, because then Dane went on to do so many other incredible things.
Like host the show. How many people
Yeah.
get to host SNL? I mean,
one of the things that, again, these are just stories that you can't. I'm a guy from Boston. I've been working comedy clubs. I was working with the Reverb for a guitar comic in a basement. And now I'm working with a guy who tells me, listen, we got to build a website. I'm like, what's a website? He's like, listen, I'll show you. I'll show you the U.S. Army site. I'm like, the U.S. Army? He's like, yeah, that's the only one that there is. And I watch it with him. He's like, find me that guy and have that guy build my site. I said, Dane, I don't know. Please. The guy wanted $25,000, the toughest negotiation I ever had to get him down a little bit. He did Dane's site. And then Dane said, we're going to go on MySpace. I'm like, whose space? What space? He's like,
it was revolutionary, absolutely revolutionary. He would personally message people back and forth.
The first 15,000 he would reach out to and answer. And so MySpace was music. I'm like, this is music. He says, don't worry, I'm going to put my stuff on, and then I'm going to say danecook.com at the end, whatever. And I was there when, we went to Chris Albrecht to sell the idea of him doing Vicious Circle and Tourgasm, and he just bet on himself. And it's like, this guy had never done more than a comedy club, except maybe a college theater or something like that. And now we've got 2 shows at Boston Garden, 38,000 people we have to fill. And this guy just presses a button and sells out the whole thing without Ticketmaster ever putting it on sale for regular people. It was his codes that he had. It was crazy. So anyway, long story longer. And one of my favorite expressions of Dane, when he tried to get things going and he was passed on so many times. This is why I don't believe anybody saying he was nervous or whatever. He would sit down with me, and this is the thing I love that he said to me. And something your audience should know about Dane Cook. When I went to his house for the first time, he said, I just going to go to the bathroom, Barry, just hang out here. And I'm standing by his office. And you know that thing when you're in somebody's house and you're kind of like, and you kind of back into where the place is, you look around, whatever. He had like all these Post-it notes all over his office. Like, it's like, and I couldn't really see what they were. And he was in the bathroom, and I was like, let me back in here and see what these things are. And I just take them off. I'm going to do Letterman. I'm going to do a sitcom. I'm going to do films where I'm the lead for a major studio. I'm going to sell out Boston Garden. I'm going to sell out Madison Square Garden. I'm going to have albums that go double platinum. Like, he was a manifester, but I didn't know it. I never saw those before. I'm going to be on Saturday Night Live. And so, I was trying to get him on Saturday Night Live as a stand-up because he was so hot. Like, so I was calling because they wouldn't give him the hosting spot. And so I kept calling. I said, why don't you do the things you used to do with like Sam Kinison? Bring him in. He'll do some stand-up or whatever. You don't have to.
Yeah. Damon Wayans did it once after he was fired. They brought him back to do stand-up. Stephen Wright, I think, did stand-up on
yeah. And I said, let's do that. If you're not going to give him a host thing, I can't get him the host, whatever. And then I'll never forget, I got the call from Marcy, and she said, this Dane open November, whatever it was, before Thanksgiving. And I said, yeah, he is, Marcy. How many sets do you want him to do? You want him to do one set? You want him to do two sets? She's like, Barry, he's hosting. I'm like, what? You told me there was no chance in hell he was ever going to host and whatever. She's like, Barry, he's hosting.
It was huge. Stand-ups now, it's Nate Bargatze, Bill Burr, but back then for a stand-up to get that just off being known as a stand-up, it just really did not happen. Maybe Dice Clay back in the day in 89 or 90, whenever it was, but I mean, it was unbelievable. And remember when I found out he got the booking, I was like, this guy has arrived.
Yeah, and then we got the booking for the premiere of the next season. So in less than a year, we're doing this. And this is the story that, oh my gosh, I can't, when I think about this is crazy. So, well, first of all, one of the most exciting things about SNL is something that a lot of people don't get to experience. And I was fortunate enough to, because it's like when you go to, like, let's say a huge casino, this amazing casino, and it's like every single thing is pristine. It's beautiful. It's like, this is legendary. And then if you really are working in the entertainment business, they take you behind the kitchen to go a certain way. And then you're going behind the kitchen and it's like, God, is this where Kennedy got shot? This is like a dive in here, this place. Mm-hmm. So when Dane, the first time he did it, like, this is the way I remember it, I walked with him back to where you walk out on stage, and you think in your mind, like, you're going to walk, this is where all the hosts go. This is
yes. Under really the bleachers, nice. And then you're behind the doors, the monologue doors.
Yeah, so this is going to be this really nice hallway or whatever. So you're walking through the cue card people painting things. They're going crazy. These people are like one step away from suicide. They're just constantly doing, whatever. And you go through all where they're building the sets and painting the sets. And then you're going through this crawl space that's like, picture 2x4s and paneling and screws and sawdust. And you're crawling through this, not crawling, you're walking through this crawl space where you have to go sideways to get to this door. And he's got one of the producers with the headset, and Dane's right by the door. I'm just like, hey man, have a great set. And then you hear Don Pardo, ladies and gentlemen, Dane Cook, and then the door opens and the producer closes the door so nobody can see the door on the other side, and then you walk out like you hope a nail doesn't catch your suit or whatever as you're on your way out. So anyway, so that was a part that I was like, holy, this is like that thing in the Wizard of Oz, don't mind the man behind the curtain. So anyway, so that I believe it's this premiere show or whatever, and it might have been the first time. So please forgive me, but this is something that I'll never forget as long as I live. So on Thursdays they do the block and tape, and for those of you who don't know what that is, they have these. Every sketch has certain camera angles where the director wants. They put the tape on the floor and you know where you're going to go for each sketch on a live show. And they have the host normally do his monologue in front of the camera crew and the sound people, And Dane said, "Listen, Barry, I'm not gonna do the thing. I know what I'm gonna do. Just submit this to them, and I'm gonna do it." And they allowed him not to do it on Thursday and just wait for the dress rehearsal. So he gets on to do the dress rehearsal show at 7:30, and he's doing the routine that we rehearsed. And he has two bits at the end. One of where he saw his dad naked and with a robe on at the table, and it was some kind of joke where when he saw his penis, it looked like something going around a tower, the vein going around the tower or whatever, something like that, crazy joke like that. And then he did the joke about the coming down after sleeping and being hungry and realizing that he had an erection and there were cashews on the counter, and he took a cashew and put it on the end of his cash, as he would say, as cash and prizes, and pushed it down and popped the cashew up and into his mouth. So those are the final two bits he did, which were not cerebral at all. They were just like, they were, I'd say they were intelligent jokes or dirtier jokes. And I'm there watching him, and halfway through, he's killing so hard before he does these bits that I just decided to go around and just go in the dressing room and kick my feet up, and I am like, this is the greatest moment of my life. I'm like, it doesn't get much better than this. This is incredible. I'm watching on TV, he's killing, does those two final bits, and I'm like, because I know he's going to be running around from place to place getting his makeup. And I'm in there with my feet up, and there's this noise, this bang, and the door kicks open. I don't know if you've ever seen a door kick open, but it just kicks open. It just keeps banging against the thing 3 times. And I'm just like, what the? And I sit up, and it's Marcy Klein and the head of standards and practices. And for those of you who don't know what that is, that's the person who determines what's not able to get on air and what is. And Marcy, again, like the way she did with me, she'd be like, who the do you think you are? Do you think that he's going to get on the live show like that? I will pull him off this show, Barry. This is not happening. It's never going to happen. You better tell him that he cannot do those bits, or else I am going to take him off this monologue. And I'm like, Marcy, I thought that this would be great. It killed. You saw, you got like a standing ovation. I don't care. This is Saturday Night Live. You can't just do what you want to do. And she slammed the door. And again, one of those moments that seems to be the recurring theme of this whole interview is I'm just like, oh my God. This was the greatest moment of my life, and now I have to figure out how is this moment going to be solved so we can move forward into something better. And I'm just thinking to myself, this is bad, because I've got to tell him, but I don't want to tell him in between his dress rehearsal bits, because then I'll his mind for the thing. So I have to wait until he gets done with the good nights of the rehearsal show and get him right away and tell him before he goes up to Lorne's office for the things. And the way I remember it is I'm about to tell him and thinking, how am I going to figure this out so he's, empower him and with the edits or whatever it's going to be, because he knows there's going to be edits. He knows things are going to be cut. And Lorne comes, and this is how wonderful Lorne was and how I have so much respect for him. He says, Dane, standards and practices are pretty upset. And I'm like, yeah, Dane, I was going to tell you, but I didn't want to ruin the. It's like, don't worry about it, Barry. What's up, Lorne? Those last two bits, they're very upset, and they want you not to do those two closers. And he's like, Lorne, those are my closers. And then Lorne, this is what Lorne said, and this is why he said, Dane, listen, pick one. Pick one that you want to do and get rid of the other one. And I'll handle it behind the scenes myself with Marcy and everybody else. You just do what you do, but let's do a compromise. Just do one. And he decided to do the cashew bit. And then they, the way I remember it, that was the first time he was on the show. And then that's when Lorne had a relationship with him where he brought him back for the.
So after good nights in the hallway or at the party, does Marcy then come up to you afterwards and give you a hug? Or is there a celebration, the acknowledgement that, everything came together and it was a huge success?
I would, at the party, yes, but I was always the kind of person who, no matter what, somebody could stab me in the shoulder and I'd be like, hey man, it's okay. I love you. We're going to get through this. I'll just get some stitches and everything is being okay. Nobody has to know about this. And because I just felt like it's better to handle things with love and kindness than it is to handle things any other way. And so even if they don't go well for you, even if things don't come together, then people will always remember that you were calm and you felt love and you gave them love. I remember this old thing that I forget, but it's like something somebody said to me a long time ago. I'm sure it's written on the walls of caves, and I'm sure that if we scrub our Instagrams, we'll probably be able to find 7,000 different ancient monks saying it. But all you have to worry about in your life truly is that, do you bring happiness and inspiration and kindness and love to people? And, and do you experience love, kindness, and joy in your life as well? And by always being positive, I think it's a great feeling because it allows you to experience both those planes equally.
But a lot of your clients are not like that. So they were lucky to have someone like you to talk them off the ledge and to be around the positivity, because some of they look confident when they're on, when the camera is on, but a lot of those people would be shocked. I mean, it's some of the people that don't have that, but you're lucky that you're wired like that, or you've gotten yourself to that point. I mean, it's amazing. I would say your client on Letterman had the best stand-up debut of anybody in the 25 years on CBS, which was Jeff Ross, in terms of an audience reaction in 1994, that fall. I've never seen somebody crush with an audience. And he was your guy. It was the 13th of what month was it? 13 was Jeff's favorite lucky number. And it was last minute. You're on a plane with him going over the set and you're telling him what he should, the order of everything. And I mean, we don't have time to get into this, but I mean, just the fact that Dave Letterman wanted to meet with Jeff afterwards. And I mean, we don't have time for all of that, but I mean, it's unbelievable the talent that you saw, that you worked with, and it's the results that you've gotten for these people.
And I love Jeff Ross, and just again, so your audience knows, it's like always understand that the possibilities are just endless, and even when things seem like it's like so bad, and it's so you can't see anything possible that's going to happen good from anything. It does. You look at Jeff, what you're talking about. He does Letterman. Letterman offers him a sitcom. And then I get back to my office again. This is the running theme, it seems, of my life. I go back to my office. I'm like, oh my God, this is like this is unbelievable. Letterman offered my client, I mean, his own show. This is crazy.
Dave was the biggest thing in television at the time. For the people that are listening, the younger people, there was nobody bigger in TV at this point than Dave Letterman. And he had a deal with CBS, and Worldwide Pants had not had a sitcom yet, but this was going to be their first.
That's so right. So here's the running theme. I'm sitting there in my office, 57th and Broadway. I'm like, happy. Phone rings. It's Glenn Padnick from Castle Rock.
Seinfeld. I mean, what are you going to say? It's Seinfeld's
like,
production company.
I just saw the feed on Letterman. I want to meet with this guy. Let's fly out. And so we met with him. We met with CBS and Letterman. And I remember Les Moonves calling me and saying, listen, Barry, I just want to tell you something. I've been in the place where you're at a lot, and it's a very challenging place. I love David Letterman. He means so much to me. I just want you to know that I don't want to lose Jeff Ross. So just promise me, whatever you do it at CBS. And then he sent us both CBS jackets and Worldwide Pants jackets. And Jeff decided to do a pilot with the late Kevin Rooney with Castle Rock, which didn't get picked up. And the next comedian on Letterman, Ray Romano.
Yeah, I mean, and then Ray, of course, I mean, an unknown.
But
unbelievable.
Just so your audience knows. So now Jeff is at a lower moment because things didn't happen, but Ray's at a higher moment. But one of the things that I haven't even told you is that before that happened with Ray, he got cast in News Radio. And he had the job, and he went to the table read. And after the table read, he was fired. And they hired Joe Rogan. And then Joe Rogan's career launches. So
it's unbelievable to look at that. Yeah.
Life is a series of incredible moments. You can look at the entertainment business, but you can look at anything, any business. You can figure out a way to take something that's not as positive and make it positive. It's incredible the things that can happen. A lot of people don't even realize this, but Carsey Werner, they worked at ABC. They started their own company together over a shoe store on Ventura Boulevard. Okay, they went to Cosby. It was a guy they wanted to do a show with. They put the show together. What did they do? They went to their old bosses at ABC. Hey, this is a slam dunk. Here you go. They passed. Then they go to NBC. NBC's the fourth network. They become number one with Cosby. So then their next person they develop is Roseanne. So what do? they bring Roseanne to NBC. They say, hey, listen, we're doing this with Cosby. Here's Roseanne. Let's do the NBC says, no, thank you. We don't. That's not for us. They go to ABC. She goes to #1.
It's unbelievable. Universal Amphitheater. They had all the networks there to see her. It was her and Louis Anderson. And she was.
I used to represent Louis. I love Louis.
Yeah, Louis was such a nice man. But yeah, Roseanne said some very off-color things during her set. She ended with at the Universal Amphitheater, and I think she scared some people. But I give ABC made the absolute right decision. Obviously, I have so many more things to ask you, and I know that
I guess we'll have to do it again.
Will you come back? Oh my gosh, I'd be so honored. I want to mention that everybody needs to go to barrykatz.com right now. Now, if you or anybody that wants to perform, if you want to write, if you want to produce, Blueprint for Success, you're not going to do anything better than this. All the information is there, and if somebody has a vision, if you have dreams, or if you just want to be in the right direction, who's going to know more than somebody that has lived this for several decades and has been on top? Industry standard. Everyone has to check that out. But definitely, Blueprint for Success has helped a lot of people, and I want everybody to check that out.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, like just putting something together, because you can't help everybody. So you got to figure out, okay, how can I help as many people as I can without compromising myself as a manager or a film and television producer? Like I'm working on a film right now with the guy who wrote Die Hard, Jumanji, and Armageddon. And, I want to, I love doing stuff like that, or work I did, just television shows, specials. I love managing, but I don't want to stop helping people. So if there's a way I can figure out how to help people get through the minutia of it all and not make the same mistakes that most people make, I'd love to do that. But I love the business. I love everything about it. I've loved this conversation. You reminded me of so many things, of the comedy and tragedy of it all. But through it all, I'm still smiling, and I hope that I live another day in this business.
No, it's unbelievable, Barry. I'm so glad we got to do this. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. What a pleasure. I'm so grateful.
Thanks for listening. Please subscribe so you never miss an episode. On Apple Podcasts, please rate it and leave a review. Be sure to go to latenighter.com for all your late night TV news. And you can find my podcast at latenighter.com/podcasts. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next Tuesday.